Ladies and gentlemen, we just got the official jobs report for the month of March, and let me tell you what, President Trump's economic policies aren't just working, they're absolutely dominating. In fact, President Trump's economic policies are working so well that not even the left-wing propaganda outlets like CNN can pretend otherwise. Now, folks, we are going to have a lot to talk about today, but to kick things off, I think it's probably best if you all take a look at this report for yourselves. Let it play.
Some more breaking news now. The March jobs report just released moments ago telling us that the U.S. economy added a stronger than expected 228,000 jobs last month, and as the unemployment rate changed only slightly, now at 4.2%. Matt Egan, back with us. Okay, what does this mean?
Well, Kate, this is good news because it shows that the jobs market was in good shape in March. I think the bad news is there are growing fears that
this was March.
That this was March and that this unfortunately may not last because of the trade war. Let me run you through the numbers. 228,000 jobs added in March. Now, this was stronger than expected. This really blew away forecasts for around 130,000. Also, this represents an acceleration from January and from February, both of which were revised lower. The unemployment rate, it did tick higher to 4.2%. That was expected. When we dig into some of the sectors here, the one that everyone's paying a lot of attention to right now is the federal government. This report showed that federal government employment did fall by 4,000 in March. That follows a 10,000 drop in February. But we're likely just starting to see this in drips and drabs because a lot of people who were laid off, they're not yet collecting unemployment. So those numbers are likely to go even higher. Also, just one other point here on the cost of living. Wages were up again by a solid amount. It cooled a little bit, but wages were up by 3.8% year over year. That is well ahead of the most recent rate of inflation, which you can see was just below 3%. So that means paychecks are beating prices.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have to say, the way that CNN covers all of this is absolutely hilarious. They're forced to acknowledge all of the cold hard facts. They can't deny those. Job creation is through the roof, wages are up, and also inflation is down. But they do their absolute best to fearmonger and try to downplay all of President Trump's massive economic accomplishments. Newsflash, CNN, President Trump's economic policies are working. In fact, there's actually one major issue that CNN neglected to mention during their report. You see, so far, President Trump has actually been able to secure trillions of dollars worth of manufacturing investments right here at home in the USA. Take a look.
Well, you started hearing it recently when Donald Trump yesterday said we have about $5 trillion of committed investment to America. $5 trillion. That means people are going to start building factories right now. And that means all that construction work begins now. That starts to employ Americans today. You're going to see plants being built, factories rebuilding. All shifts are going to be running hot across America now. You're going to see employment leaping starting today.
And so, folks, that is the reason that President Trump's economy is booming right now. As we said earlier, job growth is through the roof, wages are up, and inflation is down. And you know what? It's worth mentioning exactly how President Trump has been able to secure this $5 trillion worth of domestic manufacturing investments. The answer, ladies and gentlemen, is tariffs. You see, as a consequence of President Trump's trade tariffs, manufacturers have decided en masse to relocate their manufacturing facilities back home to the United States in order to avoid paying all of the import costs associated with the tariffs. And as we can all see so far, that plan is working absolutely flawlessly. Now, of course, some people are currently freaking out about the stock market. But you know what? Check this out. Just yesterday, President Trump's Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, had a really great breakdown of how all of this relates back to the markets. Take a look.
What is your reaction and what is the impact on Europeans? You want them to spend more on defense, which they're agreeing to finally. But how can they do that when their economies are crashing and they are now
No, their economies are not crashing. The markets are reacting. No, their economies are not crashing. Their markets are reacting to a dramatic change in the global order in terms of trade. And so what happens is pretty straightforward. If you're a company and you make a bunch of your products in China and all of a sudden shareholders or people that play the stock market realize that it's going to cost a lot more to produce in China, your stock is going to go down. But ultimately, the markets, as long as they know what the rules are going to be moving forward, and as long as that's set and you can sustain where you're going to be, the markets will adjust. Businesses around the world, including in trade and global trade, they just need to know what the rules are. Once they know what the rules are, they will adjust to those rules.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, that is the absolute truth. And you know what? Something pretty profound actually just occurred to me. We all know that China is a direct adversary of the West. That much goes without saying. But as things stand right now, both Europe and America alike are pretty much beholden to China's manufacturing capacity. And as we all saw very recently in early 2021, as the pandemic swept across the world, relying on China's manufacturing to the degree that we currently do can cause some pretty serious issues when things get a little bit turbulent. And so here's what occurred to me. If all of these countries in Europe were smart, they'd actually use Trump's tariffs as a reasonable excuse to reshore their own manufacturing and start slowly cutting China out of the picture. We all know that domestic manufacturing really is the way to go, and we also know that without the Western world's business, China is pretty much done for. So when you look at things that way, bringing manufacturing back home to the West in both America and Europe really is a no-brainer decision. But hey, who's to say whether or not Europe actually seizes this golden opportunity that Trump has handed them? Only time will tell. However, with all of that said, as we all just saw earlier today, the European Union has decided to drop almost all of their tariffs on American-made goods. So hey, who knows? Maybe Europe is finally starting to get with the program and realize that propping up the CCP isn't the smartest move after all. The reality is that in less than a week, President Trump has overhauled the global economy to the benefit of America and the Americans therein, and as we've talked about, we can already see the immediate effects. Job creation is through the roof, inflation is down, wages are up, manufacturing investments are coming pouring into the country, and now almost 100 other countries are begging Trump to drop his tariffs, offering to entirely remove their own tariffs on American products if he does so. So you know what? Who's really to say what happens with all of these other countries? Time will tell. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen? Either way, regardless, over here in America, we are all going to keep on putting America first. Now, folks, before we wrap up with today's video, I want to say that I've actually made a community Facebook page where I'll be posting additional news and updates as it relates to all of this. So hey, if you guys use Facebook, check out the pinned comment down below and go ahead and give that page a follow. But everyone, that is going to be a wrap for today's video, so please go down below and drop a comment. Let me know what you think about all of this. Please like the video while you're down there. Please consider doing me a huge favor and subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton with my daily struggle against the YouTube algorithm. But as always, thank you all very much for tuning in today, and of course, stay safe.